Welcome to episode 3 of Debunking the Myths of Modular. In my recent video, pushing back on Mr. Synthpunk's hatred for modular, I couldn't help but notice that he seems really confused about the differences between a keyboard synthesizer and a modular synthesizer, so that's what we're going to look at today. When I talk about keyboard synthesizers, what I'm really referring to are fixed architecture, polyphonic or monophonic instruments. These can be keyboards or modules that you connect a MIDI keyboard to, and they can have a variety of different synthesis methods inside. It's easy to see where the confusion comes from. These days, with analog being all the rage, we see a lot of instruments that have VCOs, VCFs, VCAs, envelopes, and all the sorts of things that we're used to seeing from the olden days of modular instruments. Many of these new instruments are even semi-modular. They may have a fixed architecture, but they might have a whole number of patch points on it that let you make some external patching with cables. Although not as flexible as using patch points on a purely modular synth, many modern keyboard synthesizers have a matrix modulation screen built in that lets you patch modulators and sources into different destinations. This can be a great place to start, but it still isn't going to give you the kind of flexibility and creativity that's available from a fully modular instrument. What really sets modular synthesis apart from fixed architecture keyboard synthesizers is that a modular instrument isn't just designed to let you build up some kind of a keyboard synth. For example, it wouldn't make sense to buy all the modules that you need and build yourself your own mini Moog. You can certainly do that, and there's some great sounding Moog style modules out there that can get you started, but modular is about so much more. Under the hood of your typical keyboard synthesizer are all kinds of background utility processes that are either happening in hardware or, often as is the case nowadays, happening in software that are controlling the synthesizer without you really seeing what's going on. Some of these processes can be VCAs that control the amount of vibrato modulation that's going to oscillators. Or it could be circuitry that opens and closes the filter as you play up and down the keyboard. Or the ranges for controls on the front panel. On a modular system, all of these background processes are brought to the front of the instrument as patch points. This allows you to plug them in all kinds of different ways to get the synthesizer to do something that the original designers never intended. Going back to our mini Moog example, you could use a modular system to build up the components, the 3 oscillators, filter and amplifier, and contour generator of the mini Moog, and then add in some extra patching that a normal mini Moog would never be capable of. For example, you could use 2 oscillators ring modulating each other, and then use the 3rd oscillator as an amplitude modulator for the output of that ring modulator. Or, if you're like me, you'd want to mix together those 3 oscillators and then patch them into a VCA that then heads into a filter. The output of that filter then goes into another VCA, and then from there goes into a wave folder. The output of that wave folder goes into the final VCA, and then the keyboard and the envelopes control the amount of wave folding and the amount of gain that happens throughout the whole patch. The real power of modular comes when we realize that it isn't about the different modules and their functions, but it's about the voltages they produce and the fact that those voltages can go anywhere to do all sorts of different things. Once we learn to think about synthesis as sound, and we just start to look at building blocks in a process that we've created ourselves, we can use different modules to create voltages that model or mimic the sound processes that we're looking for without being locked into what the functions of those modules are. In his book, titled X Without Y, Modular forum member Radio Koala makes this same point. I'll put a link to the book, X Without Y, in the description. His first example is to show us that note voltages and gate voltages need not travel together to create musical events. This powerful idea disconnects the pitches of musical notes from their timing and duration. But this is just the beginning. His book goes on to demonstrate dozens of different ways to use relatively simple voltages to create all kinds of complex structures. An added benefit of this method is that you can use the same set of simple modules to create all kinds of different complex functions simply by sending the voltages into different places. There's a lot more to modular synths than simply being able to build their fixed architecture counterparts. Most modular users that I know still use fixed architecture synths, and I certainly own a collection of them myself. There's just simply no better alternative in terms of polyphony and being able to recall patches. But they don't hold a candle to modular when it comes to programmability. Modular synths allow you to create networks of voltages that perform complex compound musical tasks. Each modular user creates their own unique patches and their own music from those patches. No two modular users are going to patch a synth in the same way, and this is part of the power of modular synths. Please like and subscribe, and consider joining my Patreon to help me make more videos and more modular music. Take care, and we'll see you next time as we continue debunking the myths of modular.